Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. Welcome or welcome back from the next edition of Undercover Lies. Once again, we'll delve into that crazy mind of the former President Donald J. Trump. First of all, I just want to come out and quell the rumors. I didn't get peed on Trump. Definitely did get peed on Trump. Here's some context to help prove our case.
Trump had spoken to people who had been on the trip with him, and they had reminded him that he didn't stay overnight in Russia for that. So, let me explain. The so-called P-tape that's in the Steele dossier that got leaked and Trump is obsessed about, and now there's investigations on whether parts of that dossier are true and that Donald Trump actually is beholden to the Russian government and oligarchs, right? In that is the golden showers thing where Trump goes into a hotel in Russia, the same room that the Obama stayed in, according to the dossier, and he has two Russian prostitutes pee on the bed.
Since we have a lot to cover about why I think Donald Trump is a fascist and an authoritarian man and wanted in his heart of hearts to take over as dictator in the United States. He was the 45th, but what that really means is that this is a mathematical equation wherein it states that Trump is 45 times worse than any other president in the United States history. I am sure that Trump is not the only president to ever consider sedition and dictatorship, but he is the very first to illegally try to actively toss out our Constitution and install his immoral self into the office of Dictator of America.
Based on the man you know, is Donald Trump, when he says things like fire and fury, is he imitating sort of an autocrat that he thinks an autocrat would be, or does he really mean it?
It's very evident that he deeply would like to be a dictator.
I'm sure he can still hear his mama telling him, make sure you put your name on everything. It's all yours. You deserve to take everything and anything you want. You're entitled to it. Any company, anything, even America. Go, my son, take it. Not by brains, but by the only thing you can understand, by force. He also writes his name on everything so he doesn't forget his own name, but he doesn't really talk about that part. One of the best examples that I can give you of Trump's authoritarian lean is the hang the Mike Pence moment that happened on January 6, 2021. Trump and his treasonous bunch of good old boys pressured Pence to send the votes into the House of Representatives, whom Trump had in his pocket. But Pence happened to stand up to Trump for the very first time.
Donald Trump defends his supporters chanting hang Mike Pence, saying, listen, Pence was safe. He wasn't actually in danger. And the supporters were right to be angry because the election was stolen. Again, going to the previous reports that Trump was furious with Pence, demanding Pence do something to keep him in office, which Pence couldn't do. So again, another story verified. Let's go to the audio. Here is the interview from March of this year. Take a listen to this.
Were you worried about him during that siege? Were you worried about his safety?
No, I thought he was well protected, and I had heard that he was in good shape. Mm-hmm. No, because I had heard he was in very good shape. But no.
You heard those chants. That was terrible. I mean,
he could have. Well, the people were very angry.
So Jonathan Carl says the chants, the hang Mike Pence was terrible, and Trump says, well, people were angry, and that they were legitimately angry.
And hang Mike
Pence.
Because
it's common sense, John. It's common sense.
I always thought of Pence and Trump as pull down your pants and take out your trumpet kind of guys. As in anything Trump wanted Pence to do, Pence would take it lying down and do whatever he was asked to do by his master, Trump. Pence would do it for his master and happily to the letter, and if not, Trump wouldn't be his friend no more. He's just like a child who doesn't get what he wants. You know what they say, though, tiny hands equal a tiny man with a tiny brain. I'd say this more than anything else proves that Trump thought himself as dictator of America at the worst time in American history. On the day prior to the insurrection, late January 4th, early January 5th, Trump and Pence were in Trump's office and looking out at the crowd that had gathered in anticipation for this January 6th insurrection. When Trump turned to Pence and asked, wouldn't it be great if one man could control the results of an election? The VP answered no. And then Trump, just like the second grader that he is, told him, no, you don't understand. If you don't do as I ask, I don't want to be your friend anymore.
The book also quotes Trump as telling his always loyal Vice President Mike Pence that if he didn't refuse to certify the election results, quote, I don't want to be your friend anymore.
One of the many delusional ideas of Trump's was to not visit the cemetery in France to view the graves of Americans who died in World War I, which was one of the reasons why Trump was even there. But I guess this wasn't high on his to-do list because Trump didn't want to go and eventually didn't because the rain would mess up my hair, so he says. Very little up there anyway, so I don't see what the problem is. But that is just me.
But Trump, in an unusual decision, cancelled his scheduled visit to an American World War I cemetery on the grounds of bad weather.
He also says that our men who served in the military services during the Vietnamese War were suckers and losers for joining, as well as any POW is weak and not a war hero.
Donald Trump told staff, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." Later, he called 1,800 Americans who died in the legendary Battle of Belleau Wood suckers for getting killed.
Who else but a dictator would ignore his armed services and show disdain for them and get away with it? I think shows no respect for the armed services of America because he never had the guts to join the armed services and fight for his country. Maybe he will join Russia's military. Trump got out of the draft through Daddy Fred and his pal Doctor, who falsified the medical records and declared that Trump had bone spurs and couldn't serve. Hell, I had bone spurs and still served our country. What a crock of caca this man-boy is. Money talks, bull pie walks. One more example of Donald Trump's authoritarian way, and this one's a real doozy, a real feather in Trump's cap. The murder of Michael Reinoehl. I don't think many people know his name or what happened to this poor guy. I know I didn't. Let me take you back. On August 29, 2020, Michael Reinoehl got in over his head in Portland, Oregon, and shot Aaron J. Danielson. I don't forgive his killing of Aaron J. Danielson on August 29, 2020, but he stated that he shot Mr. Danielson in self-defense, and whether or not you agree with his actions is irrelevant, because we aren't the judge or jury who was denied to him. Mr. Reinoehl never got his day in court to be found guilty because U.S. federal marshals rang Mr. Reinoehl's bell on September 3, 2020 on the orders of Donald J. Trump. He didn't want to break a nail and do it himself, of course. Mr. Reinoehl said in one of his interviews that he freely admitted that he was an anti-fascist, but he stressed that he was not involved in any group such as the supposed Antifa hooligans, but did hate fascists and therefore was anti-fascist. But Trump only sees in black and white, well, mostly white. He seems to think if you hate fascists, you can only be a part of Antifa. No compromises.
I want to paint a picture of Antifa having major involvement. A lot of people don't understand what Antifa represents. And if you just look at the basic definition of it, it's just anti-fascist. And I am 100% anti-fascist. I'm not a member of Antifa. I'm not a member of anything.
Mr. Danielson, on the other hand, was a member of a right-leaning group called Patriot Prayer. The group is dedicated to fighting against anything the left favors. This purpose is stated on its webpage. Patriot Prayer was founded by Joey Gibson. So let me tell you a dark story about the night of August 29, 2020. Mr. Danielson was involved in a protest in Portland, Oregon, and was in the streets when Mr. Reinoehl, who was traveling with his son, was stopped by the traffic and got out to see what was happening. That is when Mr. Danielson and Mr. Reinoehl got into a confrontation which happened to escalate into the shooting. There is no clear video that shows the actual shooting, but it kept escalating until it blew over the edge into the shooting of Mr. Danielson. Mr. Danielson was killed, and Mr. Reinoehl stated that the killing was in self-defense. As to whether or not that was the case, it is a moot point because now both of the gentlemen are gone. The problem I have with the above scenario is that Mr. Reinoehl did not get his fair day in court. That was denied him on September 3, 2020. On that day, U.S. Marshals decided on Trump's orders to execute him in the streets. No trial, no judge, no verdict. All this was denied him because Trump didn't want a trial. He subverted the Constitution to have Mr. Reinoehl murdered, and his loyal stormtroopers complied with vigor. Reports from people that witnessed the shooting of Mr. Reinoehl state that the U.S. Marshals didn't say anything to Mr. Reinoehl, just opened fire on him and killed him on the spot. Over 30 rounds were fired at Mr. Reinoehl, but the Marshals would not say how many rounds Mr. Reinoehl actually took. Be assured, though, they killed him dead. Where is the justice in this? Where is the due process? Trump, the wannabe dictator, gave them their marching orders as sure as hell as he is orange. These stormtroopers must come to justice in their own right. Trump ordered the kill, but it took them to carry it out. I guess certain U.S. Marshals let things go to their head and became executioners and not U.S. Marshals. Is this what they thought America wanted? Is this the defense they will use? Just like the Nazis? Well, Trump's subverted self was born in Germany, like he likes people to think, in a tiny fascist village for a tiny little man. No, you don't take an oath to any president. You take it to defend the Constitution and a free country. That is what these idiots seem to forget in their quest to please their fearless leader and further their own agendas. Again, the Constitution is to be protected, not subverted by any man-boy that comes along. So thanks for stopping by and visiting with me again. I will see you next week when I will come out with a new video concerning the dictatorship of Donald J. Trump. Until then, if you like what you hear, please subscribe and hit the like button. That would really help me grow. Also, tap the notification bell so that you can be notified of my next video, due out early next week. Tell your friends, especially those that still are entranced with loser Trump, so we can get them out of their stupor. Thank you, and remember, we need your vote.